Russia is downplaying the prospect of a face-to-face meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky. President Trump had been pushing for in-person negotiations following his meetings with both of those leaders. The White House says Putin has agreed to begin the next phase of the peace process, but Russia's foreign minister is suggesting a bilateral or trilateral meeting won't be happening quickly, saying, quote, any contacts involving the heads of state need to be thoroughly prepared. A Russian representative for the United Nations echoed that sentiment, telling the BBC, quote, nobody had rejected the opportunity for direct talks, but it shouldn't be a meeting for the sake of a meeting. But last night, President Trump told a conservative radio host that plans for a meeting are actually in the works.
I had a very successful meeting with President Putin. I had a very successful meeting with President Zelensky, and now I thought it would be better if they met without me, just to see. I want to see what goes on. You know, they had a hard relationship, very bad relationship, and now we'll see how they do. And if necessary, and it probably would be, but if necessary, I'll go and I'll probably be able to get it closed. I just want to see what happens at the meeting. So they're in the process of setting it up, and we're going to see what happens.
The White House is also moving forward with arranging a trilateral meeting between Putin, Zelensky, and Trump. Sources tell Politico the Trump administration is considering holding that discussion in Budapest. While the White House hasn't commented on that reporting, officials did confirm Trump spoke to the Hungarian Prime Minister, Viktor Orban, on Monday. Putin, however, has told Trump he prefers Moscow, and French President Emmanuel Macron is pushing for Geneva, with the Swiss president promising immunity for Putin. It's important because, remember, the International Criminal Court has an arrest warrant out for the Russian leader for war crimes committed in Ukraine. Meanwhile, it's still not known exactly what security guarantees the United States would provide for Ukraine after the war. President Trump told Fox News there would be no American soldiers on the ground if that happens, but air support is an option. The White House has also suggested that Putin would agree to European troop deployments in Ukraine for post-war security, but Russia's foreign ministry denounced that idea earlier this week. Meanwhile, it would take Russia 4 more years of fighting and cost nearly 2 million additional casualties for its forces to capture and control the remaining land of the territories it illegally annexed in 2022. That's according to the British Ministry of Defense, which calculated and released those numbers ahead of Ukrainian President Zelensky's Oval Office meeting on Monday. This comes as Russian strikes overnight in Ukraine's northeastern region and in the city of Odessa injured at least 30 people. Local officials say the strikes also damaged the city's port infrastructure. And back here in the U.S., the National Guard was seen patrolling new areas of Washington, D.C. yesterday. Troops have expanded beyond tourist destinations like the National Mall and the White House. They were spotted in the Navy Yard area of the city, patrolling Nationals Park as the team hosted the New York Mets. Troops were also present at metro stations across D.C. The increase in coverage coming as hundreds of additional troops deployed from Republican-led states are arriving here to the Capitol. Yet the expanded patrols were not welcome in every part of the city. Take a look at this. Residents outside of the Columbia Heights metro station chasing out the law enforcement officers stationed there. Some officers wore unspecified outfits that simply read police. Joining us now, White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Ken Thomas. Ken, I want to start with you where we began our show on the U.S.-Russia war. Moscow is already lowering the expectations here that there's going to be the sort of high-stakes bilateral that Trump had promised immediately after European leaders left on Monday. What does this tell you about where things actually are? Because now there does seem like there is dissonance between the sides.
Yeah, good morning, Allie. It shows the difficulty of just simply getting the two sides to speak.
Yeah.
Zelensky and Putin have not had direct conversations since 2019. The Kremlin considers Putin meeting with Zelensky to be both beneath him. Putin doesn't even refer to Zelensky by his last name. So just getting them to sit down to speak is going to be a huge hurdle. And at the same time, the White House is trying to get together some of the details they would need to provide these security guarantees that would be very important to any kind of peace agreement. We saw the Joint Chiefs, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dan Kane, meeting with European military officials, in the overnight hours to try to, look at what this peacekeeping force would look like, how you would develop it. The president has been clear that we're not going to see, American soldiers directly involved, but there will be potentially some type of air support that the U.S. would provide. But they're really trying to fill in some of the details and facilitate these conversations that need to take place.
I wonder if the White House is looking at the way that the Russians are sort of trying to pump the brakes on this, saying, no, we've got to thoroughly prepare, despite the fact that all of these other meetings came together really on the fly without the preparation that you typically have for heads of state to meet. Do you think that that's them saying, we got the validation that we wanted out of Alaska, and now we can, again, continue to run out the clock, as has been the strategy and the concern from experts?
Yeah, and that's the fear that Russia will get close, but then they will back away, and they will see more of an incentive to keep fighting. That Putin really will not live up to his end of the bargain. He has backed out of agreements in the past. So that I think the White House, though, sees this as a real window of opportunity to get these sides together to try to make progress on ending this war. And we even saw Caroline Leavitt say that the president is going to be staying in Washington. He was going to take a vacation this month. That's off the table. So there's a real focus, an intense focus on Ukraine right now.
Yeah. So no Bedminster for now. But this is also the dual focus of the White House. They are looking overseas at the situation in Ukraine, and then also very much in their backyard, in our backyard here in Washington, the flooding of national troops here. What do you think that this portends for other cities, or is Washington a singular example? I think it might be hard to argue that because of what happened in Los Angeles and looking like it's a precursor to what's happening here. But what are the precedents that they are setting? What are we watching for as this continues to go forward?
Right. I mean, we saw this happen in Los Angeles. We're seeing this happen in Washington. So there's clearly a template. I mean, there's been some suggestions that other cities could be next, like Oakland, California, for example. I think the president has been singularly focused on California and Gavin Newsom there. So I think it would not be surprising if we see this take place in other states. And you're seeing Republican governors being willing to help the president here in Washington. We have about 1,200 National Guard troops being deployed from, largely southern states, Louisiana, South Carolina, West Virginia and Ohio is also involved. So, it's not hard to see Republican governors in other parts of the country willing to deploy some of their troops to help. Obviously, these states have their own National Guards, but there's just a clear, template being set by the president to try to, create this idea of controlling crime in major cities.
Yeah, and I think that was very much an undercurrent when we saw this happening in Los Angeles was if it can work here, it can be a blueprint for other places. And so I think you're right to bring up the potential for a place like Oakland. I often wonder about New York because it's always in the back of the president's mind. I think that that's definitely something for us to watch for as it continues to unfold here in our very neighborhoods and our city. But Ken, you've also got some new reporting that I want to get to because you write about a federal website that tracks government spending that's back online now after the Trump administration took it down in March. Talk a little bit about the court case that forced the White House's hand here.
Yeah, very interesting development in this budget fight that we've seen between the administration and lawmakers. There were public interest groups that have been pushing for the White House to put this online system back available to the public. They took it down in March. There's a 2022 law that requires OMB to put out details online and in terms of how it's spending money that's been appropriated by the Congress.
Yeah.
And so, we finally saw the courts step in and order the administration to start doing this. And I think the context here is that there's this fight that we've seen brewing for months. There was a rescission battle earlier this summer in which they clawed back about $9 billion in spending. We're going to see a big fight next month over the federal budget. There's some concerns we could have a shutdown. Yeah. And so, all of this is in the ether in this fight between the White House trying to take back the power of the purse from members of Congress.
Yeah, and Congress seemingly, at least the majority party, Republicans there, not seemingly overly upset with the fact that the White House would like them to cede that very central congressional power. That's not usually something that you see in Congress. They try to herd as much power as they can get. But here we are. White House reporter for the Wall Street Journal, Ken Thomas, always love having you. Thank you. And his latest reporting is available to read online now. It's an important piece that could set up the backdrop for that potential government shutdown in September.